Welcome to the Daily Devo. My name is Diana. Today we are talking about Psalms of Ascent. The Psalms of Ascent. They are 15 psalms that were spoken and sang by God's people, the Israelites, as they traveled to Jerusalem for their annual feast each year. Think about that. The exact same song spoken, sang, or prayed by the people of God as they traveled to the temple in Jerusalem. They were singing these as a way to prepare their thoughts and their heart and to remember all that God had already done. Think about your life. Is there a yearly rhythm that you have? What if before you started a new school year or before your birthday each year, you sang the same 15 songs each day leading up to that day? Or if maybe before a holiday like Christmas or Easter, you spent 15 days singing the same song, the same poem, the same part of Scripture. Well, that's what God's people were doing as they traveled to the city of Jerusalem, to the temple, for their annual feasts that happened in the spring, the early summer, and the fall. Now, real quick, before we jump in, I want to give you some more fun facts. There are 3 kind of big themes in each of these 15 different psalms, and we will look at one a day for the next few days. First, these Psalms of Ascent, they recount the hardships that the people of God had experienced from other nations. The second thing they do is they remember the gracious way that God guided and cared and protected his people. And third, they talk about the blessing of being in Jerusalem, that promised land that God had said he would bring them to. So let's jump into the first Psalm of Ascent. We're going to find it in Psalm 120. Listen to how it starts in verses 1 and 2. It says, "I call on the Lord in my distress, and he answers me. Save me, Lord, from lying lips and from deceitful tongues." What a way to start this 15-day journey. Did you know what they did? They start by acknowledging their need and their distress before the Lord. They are asking the Lord for help. Think about that. Every year, the people of God, right away, they are admitting their distress. They're admitting the hard. They're admitting their need for God right at the very beginning. Here's the deal. You too are invited to be honest with God. You don't have to hide or downplay what is distressing you today. For generations, God has welcomed the cries of help from his people, from the children, from the parents, from the aunts and the uncles, from the grandparents, from the widows, from the friends, who will all starting their journey by being honest. So give it a try today as you talk with the Lord. Psalm 120 goes on to talk about how they are surrounded by enemies in the north and in the south. Listen in to what he goes on to say in verses 6 and 7. It says, "Too long I have lived among those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war." Can you relate? Are there areas in your life where you too value the ways of God like forgiving others, loving your neighbor, not lying, not stealing? Yet the people around you at work or school, in your community, they seem to not honor, to desire God in those ways. Well, the psalmist is acknowledging how he is for peace, the peace of God. Could you and I say the same thing? Are we living with God and asking for his help to live out his ways in our environment today? Well, Psalm 120, the first Psalm of Ascent, it acknowledges the distress and it reflects on the choice to live life with God and his ways, even when others don't see that. So you too, you can tell God the truth about your distress. You can reflect on your obedience to honor God in challenging spaces. Let's do that today. I'll see you next time.